Hello everyone. Welcome once again to another hot edition of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Teacher Certification course. You can be seated if you're here at the house or at the House of Peace, known as the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program headquarters here in Abilene, Texas. And if you're following us online, don't forget, we welcome you as well, but don't forget you can download the book and follow us on the Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, at the top there's a link to the manual we're in tonight. It's called the Respect Manual. It's the fourth in the series of the junior high series. It's a teacher's manual. Go ahead and download it and follow us. We're going to be picking up tonight on page 140. 140 is where we left off. Chapter 5, the infamous Responding to Disrespect chapter. I call it infamous because of, as we've told you ad nauseum probably, we probably taught this lesson in the high schools and junior high, and even in the middle school, in the elementary, in the 5th grade, more times than any other lesson in the Peaceful Solution. It was the most requested by the school counselors and teachers, because they know that we all need to learn how to respond to disrespect, the bullying, and the pushing of the buttons. We need to learn to respond to our own emotions appropriately, so we don't make harmful choices that bring some kind of bad consequence to ourselves and other people or the environment. So we were talking about, when I left off in the last class, responding to disrespect from the opposite sex. You know, we've discussed this before. Sometimes people are not comfortable with the word sex, especially when there's boys and girls in the same classes, etc. In fact, I know before we discussed when we use premarital sex, when we use the term premarital sex, sometimes we'll say premarital relations, or, you know, some other term where the word sex isn't used because some people feel uncomfortable with that word. But the truth is, sex is not a bad word. It's just talking about gender, okay? It's funny, the other day, and I don't mean to make light of it or anything, but the other day somebody that I know was filling out an application for a dental appointment or a hospital appointment or some sort of thing. And on the application it asked, what sex are you? And it had, you know, instead of male, female, there must have been about 10 different boxes you could check, including I'm not sure. You know, it's like, I mean there was every choice that you could possibly think of. Talk about a confused world we're living in today, a confused society. You know, I mean, it should be pretty simple. You're either a boy or a girl, male or female, man or woman, you know. And now we have all these different terms of, it's that birthing person, you know, like, you know, because a woman is a birthing person, the man's not. So, you know, we got all these different choices out there now, and it confuses a lot of people. But the point I'm trying to make about the word sex is some people feel very uncomfortable with that term. But the fact of the matter is, it's just a word denoting gender, you know, male, female. So the opposite sex, or the opposite gender, you could even say, you could use the word gender if that's what you prefer, to make someone else comfortable. But we're learning how to respond to disrespect. And right now I got to look at my message because I had a bit of a malfunction here tonight. I was trying to get my slides sent to me. Did that get sent? Okay, yeah. I wasn't able to mail them from my Gmail account, so I had my sound crew back here email them to me, but I still don't see them on my email. Let's see. Nope. They have not appeared yet. But we'll just go ahead and I'll keep teaching here till I can. Let's see. Okay, let me look at my primary account, see if they're there. And you did send them to Gmail, right? Okay. Well, they must have been lost in cyberspace because they're not there yet. Oh, there they are. Okay, great. Man, the wonders of modern technology, man. If it wasn't for, well, first of all, modern technology is great, but you also have to have people that, have sense enough to get the slides sent ahead of time, like I didn't. Well, I tried. My computer's on the glitz right now, and I'm trying to get it all fixed, but thank you to the crew back there for getting this to us tonight. So let's go ahead and put up the first slide because I want to pick up where we left off. We were talking about this subject again, responding to disrespect from the opposite sex or the opposite gender. And we talked about, how disrespect can occur with people we know and people we don't know. There's many forms of disrespect. The one we'll focus on tonight in depth involves how to respond appropriately to disrespect from the opposite sex or the opposite gender. Let's face it, we live in a society where sex is openly talked about and displayed in all forms of media like television, songs, movies, and magazines. And as I said in the last class, yes, it is openly talked about and it's openly displayed, on billboards, magazines, at the checkout stand, in the grocery store, etc. But just because society is doing it or society says it's acceptable does not make it moral. It doesn't make it right necessarily, okay? So just because we see it as the norm in our society doesn't mean it's right, okay? And we're going to see tonight how our society is actually totally flipped. The morals have been totally flipped over, I mean, to where, a thief can say they're honest, a thief can actually say, well, I'm an honest thief, when I steal, I split it 50-50 with the person I stole with, I'm an honest thief, or I'm an honest drug dealer, when I give somebody their dope, I make sure I weigh it just right on the scale, I give them, when they buy an ounce, I give them exactly an ounce, man. I'm an honest drug dealer, okay? You see how the morals have become inverted. They've become inverted to where, or perverted. Perverted meaning they've been turned upside down. They've been turned around to something they weren't meant to be, to where you can actually use words like murder in the same sentence as love. Think I'm joking? I remember one time a man killed his family, and some lady on CNN was interviewing this psychologist about, they call it, I can't remember the term, where a man takes the life of all of his children and his wife. But the psychologist was explaining on the news why this took place, and he had a fancy term for it. And he had all these degrees in back of him. The CNN news lady, the camera was focused on the doctor, and behind the psychologist there he had tons of certificates and degrees in psychology, probably even a master's. And she asked the man, why do you think this man killed his wife and all 8 children at the same time? And this man looked directly in the camera, and without even a thought, not even a hint of shame, or like, did what I just say mean anything? Or did I get that right? This man looked straight in the camera and said, well, he loved his family so much he couldn't live without them. And I'm like, really? So love is murder. So if I love somebody, I can murder them. That proves my love. This is how inverted the morals in our society have become, okay? To where we actually believe that that's possible, that that's love, that that's care, consideration, concern, that's for another human being, to kill them, to murder them. That's love, they say. Okay. Well, we're the peaceful solution's here to set things back right, to turn things back from upside down to right side up. So we do that through education, through teaching a moral character. And it says here, with information about sex literally bombarding you from all directions, often sending out mixed messages. I had a slide that was up, by the way, if you could put that slide back up so they can read along with me. I'm in the middle of that paragraph. It says, with information about sex literally bombarding you from all directions, often sending out mixed messages, it can be difficult to tell the difference between respectful and disrespectful interactions between males and females. In other words, boys and girls in our public schools, in the middle school, for instance, they don't really know what's acceptable and unacceptable between boys and girls. Acceptable and unacceptable behavior or interactions between the two. And the peaceful solution's here to set the record straight. Because I've told you before in classes past, and I know the other teachers have also hit on this, Chris, Catan, and David, regarding these, they call them slap bottom Thursday, or slap bottom Friday, or whatever, and I'm using a term that's family friendly, where they go around grabbing each other's behind in the school. It's a tradition in all the schools now to where, it's okay for a boy to come up behind a girl or a girl to come up behind a guy and grab their behind. Okay? And nobody gets sent to the principal's office. Nobody gets sent to the counselor. Nobody gets a referral from the principal. Nothing. Because it's normal behavior. It's just the kids having fun, they say. Okay. But this is what they're saying now is acceptable in our schools. Okay? But the problem is, the only reason they think it's okay is they haven't been educated yet on all the consequences that come from that kind of behavior. And I'm not here to cover all that tonight, but if you really think back on a lot of the classes we've already talked about germs, about STDs and how they're passed, about how blood, sweat, and tears pass these diseases into other people's body, and it can even be through a touch, by the hand, by grabbing somebody, by touching them. And you might say, well, I'm not touching their skin, I'm just touching the bottom of their blue jeans. Yeah, but the bottom of their blue jeans is wet too. Right now it's 103 degrees outside. Okay, I feel pretty wet all over. I don't know if you can tell, it was pretty much, and 103 is not bad. I saw Death Valley was like 130, so I'm kind of, thankful I'm not in California right now. But it's 103, it's sweaty. People are sweating. They're sweating through their clothes, okay? And sweat contains STDs, and it contains other bacteria, viruses that you can actually get in your hands, and then you rub it on your eye or you pick your nose or something, and it goes into you. That's called an influence. Influence means to flow into, And sometimes, remember, influences aren't obvious. Just like germs aren't obvious. You don't see them. You can't see a virus. You can't see a virus. It's invisible. So when you touch it, you don't know you touched it. And when you put it into yourself, you have no clue that you even put it into yourself. But it's there. Whether you can see it, do you have to see it to believe it? Well, you shouldn't have to. You should be able to just believe the scientists that tell you that that's the case. Viruses are invisible. Okay. Now, before I go into the second part of page 140, I want to flip back and remind us let's go to LP5E in the teacher's manual, LP5E, and we are on step 9. And I just want to rehearse what we're supposed to get across to the students. It says, tell students that the last type of disrespect we're going to explore in this lesson is responding to disrespect from the opposite sex. And we're reading responding to disrespect from the opposite sex on 140 and 141 in our handbooks. And we're going to complete the exercise on page 142. Stress that both males and females have an obligation, both males and females now, to treat each other with respect by dressing appropriately and refraining, that means, not doing refraining from making sexual comments or jokes in each other's presence. And in fact, I would even go so far as to say, don't even make them at all. Even when you're in the presence of two males, why do you have to be joking about sex, joking about other people's body parts or whatever else? Can't you find something else to talk about? Okay, so let's go now. Give me just a second. I got to pull something up here. We're going to go to the next slide. Because I just mentioned the word influences, and on page 103 of this book, I want to put in your mind that keep in mind that being taught to be respectful and choosing to act respectfully are two different things. Influences are factors that affect the choices we make. And remember that influences are anything that can affect or change the way we think, feel, and act. A role model, education, television, movies, and the internet all have the potential to influence the choices we make regarding how we respect others and ourselves. And the reason I'm reading that is movies are a huge influence. Movies, video games, songs, and they all talk about sex openly, okay? And the information that they give you in those is very, 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 very faulty. Because they use words, they use the word love, very open, very liberally. When I saw her, it was love at first sight. And I just knew I had to have her that night. They make it rhyme and they make it sound, great. They make it sound, plausible, what's wrong with that? I just got to know her, she likes me, I like her, so why not, Well, we've already told you why not. First of all, you're not married. Secondly, you don't know this person. You haven't even got to know him yet. Remember the first chapter of The Peaceful Solution and back in the character unit, more than meets the eye. We got to get to know that person. Why is it important to get to know that person? Because they might be a serial killer. Who knows, right? And I'm not going, they don't go around stabbing Captain Crunch boxes and, something like that. A serial killer is somebody that kills a lot of people. And yes, there are people out there that kill women on the first date, okay? And then there are people who kill women through STDs on the first date. And then there's women who kill men with STDs on the first date. And no, they don't die the next day, but guess what? Those STDs, they got them the night that they messed around with that person that they didn't know. That they didn't get to know. They didn't get to know the moral character of that person. But you know what? They actually did. They did get to know the moral character of that person. You know how they got to know? Because the first night they met him, they took him home. That told them right there the moral character of that person. They didn't have any self-control. They didn't have any, like what else? Go through the list. They didn't have any respect for that person or themselves. That's number two. Do I have to keep naming them? Do I have to name more than one? Because if I only named one immoral character trait that they displayed, if I even named one, that should have been enough. So, this is what we're up against. We have the media telling everybody that this stuff is okay. All right? So on page 140, it says, let's set the record straight. It says, making sexual comments or jokes in the presence of someone of the opposite sex is disrespectful. In addition to this, making comments that bring attention to someone's physical development is not only disrespectful, but can also be humiliating and embarrassing. The physical development of each person, whether male or female, is part of a natural process of becoming an adult and should not be discussed as if it were the weather. Each person's body is private and must be treated with respect. Yes, each person's body is private, but we've made it, the society has made it to where we think that we can look at everybody's body now, just go buy a magazine, that displays women without their clothes on or men without their clothes on, Yeah, it's okay because they sell it, right? It's sold over the, I don't know if they still sell it. I'm pretty sure it's in all the grocery stores. You know, I'm pretty sure that, I'm not going to name them off, but, you know, they still have a, what they call smut section, you know, where you can go buy those dirty books. Okay? Because they sell them, does that make it moral? No more than marijuana. Just because the U.S. Supreme Court says marijuana is okay, or because the law of the land says that abortion is okay, does that make it moral? Does that make it right? When you know, as a Peaceful Solution student, the word moral means doesn't bring harm to myself, others, or the environment. You know that. They don't know that. Okay? They don't know that because they haven't been taught. But so that's why we have to set the record straight. Now, put up the next slide if you would. I want people to see the visual at home that might not have a book. Well, so it says girls. Now, girls, pay attention. All you girls. Girls, if there's a boy in your class who makes sexually inappropriate comments or jokes in your presence, he's disrespecting you. But you think that he likes you. You know, he thinks you think he's your friend, you know, because he's talking about you and he's giving you attention, and, you know, he's talking about your pretty face or your body parts. So you think that he's your friend, you know, that he adores you and he's really, you know, hot for you or whatever. No, he's disrespecting you. Okay? If you are dressing, now get this, girls, if you're dressing in a way to attract his attention, or sending out messages that are sexually inappropriate, then you're disrespecting yourself. And who do you need to learn to respect first? What did we learn in the beginning of this book? Before you can learn to respect others, who do you have to respect first? Yeah, you got to learn to respect yourself first. So it says, sexual comments, provocative looks, we're going to look at that word provocative here in a moment. Sexual comments, provocative looks, and whistles as you walk by are not compliments. And I've often said, I used to live in Houston, Texas. 4 blocks away was the Muslim section in the Galleria area of Houston, Texas. 4 blocks from where I lived was the Muslim section of town, and right in my area was known pretty much as the hood, you know. Well, in the hood, girls were walking around with, where's that girl that we had advertised there in a Peaceful Solution book? The one that was dressed with the halter top. Did we have her on the last slide, or was that another? There she is. That's how the girls dressed in my area. And you know what? The cars would drive by, and you know, there was a lot of young people in that area too. The cars would drive by, they were honking, they were whistling, they were, hey girl! And they were offering to her to get in the car, and you know, all these things were going on with that girl that was dressed like that. Okay? And a lot of the girls would get in the car, and these are complete strangers that are pulling up, asking them to get in the car. Okay? And but just 4 blocks away, in the Muslim section of town, the Islamic section of town, the women were walking around with veils and loose-fitting clothing that didn't show any of their body parts, and there wasn't none of that going on. and in fact, the guys in the hood wouldn't even dare go into that area of town and start honking their horn, whistling. You know why? Because as we learned earlier in this book, dress, people know you how you dress. They know that you respect yourself by the way you dress. So they know they can't dare do those kind of things with that group of people because they know they're not going to get any kind of reaction. They're not going to get any kind of looks. Okay? So it does have a lot to do with how we dress. We've really got to keep that in mind. And I'm not picking on the girls. I got something for the guys too here in a minute. Sexual comments, provocative looks, those are all not compliments. They're invitations to a risk-taking behavior in the form of premarital sex. They're trying to get you to sleep with them. I don't even know why they call it sleep with them. That's not what they're doing. They're actually doing things that bring diseases into their bodies. With over 1 million teen pregnancies and over 3 million young adults like yourself diagnosed with an STD each year, a sexually transmitted disease, every year in the U.S. alone, this is one invitation you don't want. Okay? Now, I know they make it look great in Hollywood, and they make it look great in the movies, the music, the magazines, the teen magazines they got out there, where they make it look like, they show all these different relationships between these young people, and they make it look like it's normal for them to be holding hands and kissing and all these other things. There's nothing normal about this, folks. There's nothing normal about that at all. Premarital sex is immoral. It's immoral, which means it brings harm to the boy and the girl, and it brings harm to the baby that is produced. Babies also can catch STDs from the parents. It brings harm to society in general, because if that boy and that girl, those two teenagers have a baby, who's going to be taking care of that? Who's going to be providing the diapers and the medical treatment and all that? Who's going to be providing that? It's called the taxpayers. Medicaid is billions and billions of dollars a year alone in Medicaid. Okay, so now I was going to show you how messed up things actually are. Let's look at the next slide. I want to show you how inverted. Remember I told you the morals have become inverted in our society? This is out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, UPI News. Jury blames woman's clothing in rape case. Now, I don't even think I've ever seen a Hollywood movie that would even depict this, what I'm about to read you. In other words, even Hollywood would blush at this story right here. They would even have second thoughts of making a movie like this. But listen to this. These are grown men and women who sat on a jury. It says, a jury saying a 22-year-old woman got what she deserved because she was dressed provocatively, acquitted a Georgia drifter of kidnapping and raping her at knife point. No, this is not an Onion News story. This is an actual news story, okay? Onion News is what they call satire. No, this is real, okay? Now listen to this. These are grown people that made this decision. But remember, they've been taught that she deserved it. She deserved it. She got what she asked for, okay? Now look what it says. The jury said, quote, "We all feel she asked for it the way she was dressed." Jury foreman Roy Diamond said after Wednesday's verdict, quote, "With that skirt, you could see everything she had. She was advertising for sex." The 3-man, 3-woman jury, get this, girls, or women, there was 3 girls on the jury too. 3 women, 3 grown women. You got to be an adult to be in a jury, right? So it wasn't a bunch of guys going, she got what she asked for. This is 3 women and 3 men. It says, the 3-man, 3-woman jury had repeatedly been shown a lacy white miniskirt and green tank top the woman wore when she was abducted at knife point from a Fort Lauderdale restaurant parking lot November 6, 1988. The victim said she was totally shocked by the jury's comments. Quote, "I can't understand how anybody could think I deserved to be cut up with a knife, raped multiple times, knocked out, and almost killed in a car crash," the woman said. Now, I know that seems like, what? She got what she deserved, right? I mean, she was dressing provocatively. She deserved it, right? I don't see anybody here saying, yeah, she deserved that. So I think I got a jury here that's been educated with all the facts. That jury that made this decision right here was not given all the facts. See, they were only presented with partial facts. They were only presented with what Hollywood taught them, and what their mom and dad taught them, and what their friends taught them, and what their preacher taught them, or whoever their influence was that they listened to. They thought, well, she got what she deserved. You know, she dressed like that. You dress like that, be prepared to be raped. She got what she deserved. Well, let's give them some facts from the peaceful solution. Let's see what she actually deserved. Let's go to the next slide. What did she really deserve? Let's see. On page 8 of the character unit, it says moral principles in regard to human life means acknowledging and accepting that life is valuable and all people have the potential to contribute to society, including that woman who's dressing provocatively. When you have a moral attitude toward others, you accept and appreciate that they have the right, in other words, they deserve to live in peace, safety, and security. You can demonstrate a moral attitude by being respectful and not raping people. Right? I'm reading between the lines there, right? Because if you rape somebody, is that showing respect? Is that showing that you understand ownership? Because in the first chapter of character unit that I'm reading from right here, it says, who does your body belong to? It belongs to you, right? So somebody can just come and sexually assault you? No, that's called trespassing. That's called rape. That's why there's laws against it. That's why there's laws against kidnapping. Because nobody can come and steal you, right? They can't just come and take you. Okay? You belong to somebody. Children, you belong to your parents, right? Okay, so let's go back to that slide, because I want to show you what she deserved. I want to show the jury that was taught what she deserved didn't get all the facts. Do you remember? Well, let me finish that. It says, you can demonstrate a moral attitude by being respectful toward all people. This means not taking advantage of others, but rather showing them care and concern. Okay, that's what she deserved. You know what else she deserved? In the character unit, page 66, do you recall there were some questions in activity for lights, camera, action? There was an activity we did, and it asked us some questions, and one of the questions was, if the bad guy gets hurt, I feel like he deserves it. Remember that? I feel like he deserves it. If the bad guy gets killed in a movie, I feel like he deserves it. You remember what the answer was on that? If you checked that you feel that he deserves it sometimes or always, that means that you've been negatively influenced by the movies. That's what it means. So if you feel that girl deserved to be raped because she was dressing provocatively, you've been negatively influenced by your society. That's the second fact that the jury needs to consider now. Okay, I hope they're watching. I hope one of those members or all those members are watching this broadcast or will in the future. But wait, there's another thing she deserved. On page 103 of the respect unit, the one we're in right now, does everybody deserve respect? The answer to this question is a resounding yes. Even the girl that's dressing provocatively. Doesn't say that, but what does it say? Everybody. Yes. In fact, not only do people deserve respect, but so does everything in our environment, regardless of whether it is as small as a pencil or as large as a tree. Whether it's alive or dead, yours or someone else's, respect must be shown. And the word must now, if you're in a jury, if you're in a courtroom, and the judge describes to you what the word must means, it means you have to do that. It's mandatory. There's no wiggle room. You can't get out of it. If you want to be a moral person, you must show respect to others. Everybody. Regardless of what they are what they're doing in their life at that moment. Folks, I've had people come in the Peaceful Solution program in many situations, have many problems. They've had many worse than you could probably even imagine, okay? But when that person comes in the room and sits down, you've got to treat that person the same way you would like to be treated if you're on your first step of a journey toward moral character. I don't care if it's a man that walks in there with a wig on and he has a purse and he calls himself Sarah. Yes, I've had that. Okay? And he came and he sat down, and I didn't sit there and go, hey, what are you doing with that purse there, man? I mean, men don't use purses. What's with that nail polish you got on, you know? I mean, is that what we should do? No, what we should do is teach them. What we should do is treat them the way we would want to be treated, because we could be him. We could be that person that's not yet fully educated on certain things. Because I guarantee you, if these people that are involved in all the immoral things that are going on in this society right now, if they were trained, they would not be doing what they're doing, because they would know the harm that it brings, and they would avoid it like they avoid a snake pit. They really would. It's not their fault. It's not this jury's fault. It's not the U.S. Supreme Court's fault. The U.S. Supreme Court's made up of 9 men that were trained by who? Same schools you went to, same movies you watched, same songs you listened to. I know they don't look like they listen to music. You know, Supreme Court justices are supposed to look like, you know, they don't have any friends, or, you know, I mean, they kind of look like they're really aloof and they don't really have any social life or anything. But no, they all went to college, they all went to high school. These are people. These are real people, okay? You just don't see them very much, but you hear about their rulings once in a while. But they're human beings like us. They were all taught the same thing we were taught, okay? In the same society, the same loose society. And I say loose, I mean morally loose. Morally inverted society that we live in today, where love and murder are used in the same sentence. Okay, so hopefully we set the record straight to the jury there, that somebody has deceived them into thinking that that woman deserved to be raped. No, she didn't. So let's go to the next slide. I told you we were going to discuss that word provocative. The word provocative, when it talked about on page 140, when it talked about provocative words or provocative looks or provocative dress, the word provocative means causing annoyance, anger, or another strong reaction, especially deliberately or on purpose. It also means arousing sexual desire or interest, especially deliberately. In other words, they're trying to get you interested in them in a sexual way, in a deliberate way, by the way they're speaking to you, by the jokes they're saying or the comments they're making about your body or whatever else. Now, they're trying to let you know they're interested, right? But really, what are they interested in? Think about it for a minute. What are they really interested in? They're only interested in one thing. They're only interested in giving you what they got. They don't know that. They probably don't even know they have anything. They probably don't even know what STD they got. But they're interested in giving theirs to you. They're interested in getting you to go do something with them, girls and boys and girls, both of you boys and girls, I hope you're listening, because girls do it too. They're trying to swap diseases, is what they're trying to do. They're trying to create and mutate new ones sometimes. Well, what's wrong with premarital sex and sexual transmitted diseases? Let's go to the next slide. If you recall, premarital sex on page 29 of this book said having sex before marriage opens the door for teenagers to begin worrying about STDs, abortion, and feelings of neglect and abuse. Many teens experiment with sex while under the influence of alcohol and drugs. 55% of teens believe their unplanned pregnancy was a result of having sex while drinking or on drugs. They might not even remember having sex, sadly. And then, you know, there's an entity out there called Planned Parenthood, you know, because, you know, they didn't plan for parenthood, these teenagers, you know, before they had sex with one another. They weren't planning on having a baby. But there is an entity called Planned Parenthood. But you know what? You know a sad fact about Planned Parenthood? They're not planning parenthood there either. Okay. In fact, they're handing out condoms. They're offering abortions. They're not educating anybody on anything that would turn them from this kind of behavior. In fact, they have no monetary incentive to do so. In other words, it would be like if I sold cars, you know, all of a sudden, you know, I hope that everybody goes back to riding horses again or something. Well, that would be pretty silly because I wouldn't make a living anymore. Well, guess what? These people aren't hoping that that we all start, you know, having self-control and abstain from any kind of sexual relations, you know, till we're married. They don't have any interest in that. You know why? Because there's no money to be made there. They get their money for providing abortions, contraceptives, condoms, and lying to you and telling you you're going to be protected. If you wear this piece of plastic, you're going to be safe. Protection? Protection? A piece of plastic? Wow. Because even the condom makers tell you on the back of the wrapper, on the back of every condom, it says this is not to protect against STDs. This is only to protect against pregnancies. And even then it doesn't always work. And if you recall, we talked about how STDs are transferred from person to person. Could be a handshake. You got a condom on your hand? And you wear a condom on your hand all the time? Or you're going to look funny. I mean, nowadays, they might not notice. They might think it's a rubber glove. I mean, you know, it's COVID. So, you know, they might not think anything of it, right? But unless you're wearing a condom over your whole body, guess what, buddy? You're going to get STDs. And even if you're wearing a condom, what are condoms made of? Plastic. And plastic has holes. Little tiny, tiny holes. It's called porous. Plastic is porous. Things get through plastic. In fact, the AIDS virus passes through a condom as easily as a ping pong ball goes through a basketball hoop, if I can illustrate it for you. So if you think you're going to be protected because the people from Planned Parenthood came to your school and told you you could use contraceptives or you could use a condom, they're not telling you the truth. They're only telling you what they've been told to tell you. They've been trained to tell you that. But they haven't been trained in the facts. Remember, we're here to set the record straight. The Peaceful Solution's here to educate you and set the record straight so you don't fall into these traps anymore, because that's the trap. The trap is to get you to think that you can break the rules and you're going to be safe. It's like telling you, hey, you can rob a bank, but just put a condom on the end of the gun so you get a lesser sentence if you get caught. You know? Really? Oh, okay. I believe you. I saw it on TV. I saw it on a YouTube video. It must be true. And they came to my school. That man and that woman came to my school from that agency and they told us that. It must be true. Yeah, it must be true. Hello, you're a Peaceful Solutions student. What's the number one character trait? Educated. Getting all the facts, making sure they're correct before you make a decision. You know, I had a group of people in Laredo, Texas that were in a prison. Not a prison, it was a jail. It was a county jail. And I taught them what I'm teaching here, what we're learning here. I taught them what we're learning here. I was teaching them out of the Building Moral Excellence, but it's the same ingredients that we're getting here in the junior high. I taught them this. And you know what? That same group, one day, these agencies from Laredo that push condoms, push, protection, came to their jail and told them, yeah, all you have to do is use this condom, and all you have to do is, and they even showed them how to use it, everything, the man and the woman there, both together. Showed them how to do it, showed them how to use it. And you know what our students told me? They told them? The ones that were educated in the peaceful solution, you know what they told those people? They said, that's not true. That's not true. And then they educated those two people that came in. They told them what they learned in the peaceful solution about this very thing. And you know what? Those two, they said, looked pretty sheepish when they tucked their tail between their legs and kind of slithered out of the room. Because they didn't have any answers. They couldn't refute what the peaceful solution was saying about what I'm telling you right now. You can't break the rules and be safe. Now, somebody can tell you you can. Don't worry, you're not going to get caught. Even your own mind tells you that sometimes. Oh, don't worry, no one's going to see. No one's watching. Take that candy bar. No one's going to know. Hey, go ahead and alter that document. No one's going to see it. Go ahead and wipe that out, and put something else. Folks, you can't break the rules and not get consequences. We already know that, right? We already know there's a consequence for all immoral behavior, right? Whether it's immediate, whether it's an immediate consequence or it comes later, there's going to be a consequence for our bad behavior. It's just as simple as the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. It's just as sure. All right. All right, so, and let's go to the next slide because I want to remind us what modest is. Remember we learned on page 26 about self-respect. Self-respect is knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you value. Self-respect also involves caring about yourself physically and mentally to promote positive growth and development. Now, do you think that you're promoting positive growth and development for your mind and your body when you're putting in STDs? Because these things cause glitches in our brain. When we use drugs, when we have premarital sex, when we get STDs, when we abuse alcohol, all these things are causing glitches in our system. And it's causing our bodies and our minds not to work properly. Is that promoting positive growth and development? Is sitting there listening to raunchy jokes promoting positive growth and development? No, it's not. It's like leaving out a saw out in the rain, and then you want to use that rusty blade later to cut a piece of wood, No, your mind becomes dull. You're not sharp anymore. You're dull because you sit around listening to stupid jokes, Stupid jokes. Stupid jokes that they're not building your mind. They're not building your character, a positive character, but they are building a negative character, which you don't want. Okay, so girls. Okay, so go ahead and go to page 141. And put up the next slide. I want a visual up there for the girls. Girls, keep these tips in mind. Dress, speak, and act appropriately at all times. If you don't want to be disrespected, then you must treat yourself with respect. Okay? In other words, girls, dress appropriately. There's some really nice, there's some nice clothing stores out there that actually still sell very modest, remember the word modest. I was supposed to show you the word modest on that last slide. Can you back up one slide? Just let me give you the definition of modest. Modest in the peaceful solution means having a regard for decencies of behavior or dress, not extreme. Like the halter top and the Daisy Dukes and all that, like we saw on the one girl. But the long dresses, the loose-fitting clothing, things that aren't going to draw the attention of, because you got to remember, Part of the problem, girls, is when you dress provocatively like that, you're attracting the attention of men that don't have self-control. You're actually putting a stumbling block in their way. You're actually causing them to, remember, not everyone's being trained in the peaceful solution. Not everyone can look away. Okay? Some people will look and they won't take their eyes off of you. I can show you a story right now in a Miami Walmart where a man actually followed a woman in the Walmart, ripped her clothes off her and from behind and tried to rape her right there in the Walmart. In the Walmart. In broad daylight. And he was tackled by a bunch of customers that held him down till the police got there. He couldn't control himself. Okay? If you think that doesn't take place, it does. Women are abducted every day, young girls, because men, they haven't been trained. Their minds have not been trained in the peaceful solution to be able to stop, think, consider their options, and proceed with the right choice. So you're actually putting something in their way to where if they don't have that self-control, they're going to take some actions that are not going to be great for you. That's why it's for your safety. The reason we're telling you to dress modestly is for your safety and protection. Okay? It's only for your safety, and not only for your safety and protection, but for the safety and protection of the man that don't have self-control. Remember, we don't want harm to come to anybody, right? So we don't want the man to become harmed. We don't want the woman to become harmed. So if everybody does their part to avoid these things, we won't have to worry about those kind of things taking place in our society. The second point on this, it says, if a young man speaks or acts inappropriately toward you, then use self-control and do not smile or say anything that would show acceptance or appreciation of his comments. Doing so encourages more disrespectful behavior. Get away from him as quickly as possible. Don't egg it on by, smiling, and because, I know it's very uncomfortable when these things take place for a woman, for a girl. And I'm saying women and girls. I'm sure it occurs in the workplace with men doing the same thing to women. But we're dealing with junior high children right now, okay? And it's very uncomfortable for the girls. It's very uncomfortable. Because in a school setting, you got to remember, they're very young. As Chris said, they haven't been taught anything yet. They're only about 10 years out of diapers, okay? Their hormones are raging. They haven't been getting any character education. And they're all sitting around the classroom, and they're talking about these things, and there's nothing restraining them. There's nothing restraining them. The teachers, a lot of times, don't even try to restrain them themselves because they don't feel they have any moral authority to say anything either, So that's why this education is so necessary. The third point says, be assertive and speak up. Tell your parents and teacher the comment that was made to you and let them deal with the situation. Sexual comments constitute harassment, which should be treated as the serious offense it is. Remember, sexual harassment, you might not get sued when you're a teenager, but you become 18 and you keep this kind of behavior up, guess what? You can lose all your livelihood by getting sued for sexual harassment, even putting your hand on somebody at the opposite sex in the office place. And then it says, try to avoid the individual as much as possible. This sends a clear message that you are not interested in anything he has to say. So girls, that's your tips. All right, boys, got some tips for you too. Number one, let's go to the next slide. It's the boys' tips. Use self-control to avoid saying or doing anything that could be interpreted as a sexual advance. Stop, think, and always choose to be respectful to someone of the opposite sex, the opposite gender. Remember that. Always choose to be respectful. Don't use any kind of foul language. Don't be staring at the girl. Don't be looking her up and down. Don't be doing any of those things, okay? Don't make her feel uncomfortable. Number two, Don't let your buddies pressure you into approaching a young woman and disrespecting her to prove how much of a man you are. Because first of all, you're not a man. You're still a boy, right? You're still a young man. The reason it says this is because that's a lot of times that's what occurs. People try to, you know how your quote unquote friends try to get you to do things, you know, to prove, you know, how cool you are, or how funny you can be, or whatever else. You know, don't fall for that kind of stuff. You know, stand up to it. Don't disrespect the women, the girls. The next one says, do not let any young woman influence you to say or do anything that could contribute to the 1 million teen pregnancies or to becoming infected with a sexually transmitted disease. Now, how could she do that? Well, she could be dressing provocatively. That's an influence. She could be making suggestions with her words. That's an influence. She could be using sexual innuendos, okay? Or even with her body language, she could be inviting you through her body language. But it says, don't let any young woman influence you to say or do anything that could contribute. Remember, an influence, does an influence make you do something? No, it only has the ability to affect the way we think, feel, and act, but it doesn't make us do it. Who has the choice? Whose choice is it? It's our choice. An influence is only an influence. It tries to persuade you to do something, or it tries to motivate you to do something, but it can't make you do it. You have to choose to do it. So don't let any young woman influence you to say or do those kind of things. The next point is, be wise. Sexual harassment can lead to your arrest and a court appearance. Anybody interested in that? Court appearances? Arrest? Going to jail? Even juveniles, they go to jail, right? They can go to jail. And, you know, a record, no, they're going to tell you, oh, don't worry, your record will be expunged after 7 years. You know, they go around with a sponge and they wipe out all the things you did, you know, if it's been 7 years or more, right? That's what they do. They go around marking it out. That's what I was lied to about. Guess what? I'm 61 years old, and guess what? They'll still use the same things that I did, and they'll go all the way back to my juvenile record. Nobody went through my record with a sponge or an eraser or a whiteout or anything and said, oh, it's been 7 years, let's knock all this stuff off. Nope, sorry, it's still there. So if you don't want an arrest record, a reputation, and remember, that a lot of young people don't want it. I know because I taught an anti-theft program in Laredo, Texas, and I got hundreds of students that were sent by the court whose parents did not want them to have that shoplifting charge on their record. They wanted it wiped out. And the only way they could get it wiped out is if they took the peaceful solution and they passed the peaceful solution course. And then the judge would throw it out. And parents were banging on the door to get their children in that class so they could get that off their record. They did not want that on their record. Okay? So don't think that that's a light thing. Now it says, note, boys, you are just as vulnerable to sexual comments and jokes as girls. Because there are so many mixed messages regarding appropriate sexual behavior, many young women think that young men should show interest in them by making sexual comments. Many young men feel that they are not men unless they say or do something that is sexual in nature. This is a serious misconception that comes from living in a society that constantly sends out negative messages regarding respectful behavior. In some cases, sexual harassment can lead one to court. So be wise, boys. Be wise. Be wise. Remember, wisdom is taking the knowledge that we're being taught here in the Peaceful Solution and putting it into practice. Be wise. Don't give in to these things. Don't feed into the sexual comments, the jokes, the making comments about other people's growth and development. Leave all that stuff alone. Be smart and teach others to do the same. So the next class, my time is up. The next class is going to be on 7/16/2023 at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We hope you all join us. It's great to see you all came in this 103 degrees sweltering Texas heat. And everybody that's online, thank you for joining us. Katan will be the next teacher. We'll see you next time. Thank you.